Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations to comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supergirl. So quite a few things to go over about this episode. It's kind of interesting seeing Kara being full-on reporter this episode. She wasn't officially Supergirl the entire episode. I think this is the longest she's going without being Supergirl. Because she, usually kind of suits up at least maybe once or twice an episode, but it's like, now she's fully Kara. I mean, obviously she's using her powers and everything, but still, it's just kind of interesting. And also, like, we see her do her news reporter side of thing, but that's also in conjunction with her doing her Supergirl thing. But in this episode, she was kind of full-on reporter, so that was kind of neat. Because obviously, she feels like she can't do any good for anyone until she clears Supergirl's name, and the only way she can do that is by taking down Lex and exposing everything that he's up to. Which that whole situation leads to Nia kind of going more in the hero route with everything. And I like it. It's so interesting because, like, obviously, since the last time we saw her kind of really get in action, like, her powers have grown. She's gotten a lot better control of her powers. She's got, like, she can now make energy whips and everything, which are pretty dope. And even later on, she kind of creates, like, this, like, shock wave of energy, too. It's like, yo, even to the point she throws, like, a water barrel and then she, like, electrocutes it to shock all the people. It's like, yo, she's getting really good at figuring out her powers. That's pretty dope. But a lot of, because it's interesting because both of them are trying to tackle things from different points of view. Obviously, Kara's trying to handle things from a reporter side, whereas Nia's trying to handle things from a hero side of things. But obviously, even though she's a hero, obviously, like, the DEO, as well as just people in general, if she's an alien and everything, things aren't going to look that good. Because even when everything's said and done, vigilantes are definitely at the top of the whole, like, curfew and stuff like that, so they'll be hunted down as well. But it's like helping out and taking down a few children of liberty won't do anything, which is also interesting too. Kind of a little note to notice too is, like, they're not wearing their mask anymore. I mean, I guess because they are just deputized, they don't need to, because I guess it's supposed to show more so than anything. I guess the mask before was supposed to be like, oh, this could be anyone underneath, kind of rallying numbers like that, kind of like almost like the V for Vendetta type of situation. But I think it also comes from them being proud of, like, look who we are. We want our families to be proud for us to be the ones on the forefronts, the front lines battling. So I guess that's why they don't need that pretenses anymore. I mean, it's not like Ben needs it anymore because everyone knows he's Agent Liberty. So there's that whole situation. So stopping a few of them isn't going to stop them because all aliens are still going to be targets no matter where they are. There's no safe place for them, and Kara is coming at some dead ends with her whole reporting situation because she tries to go to Lena for help, but then Lena's like the whole thing of like, oh, you only come to me to be your source and stuff like that. You haven't really been much of a friend to me. And Kara's like, what are you talking about? She's like, you don't really care about what's going on. She says, no, of course I do. The fact of the matter is I'm doing all this to help you because, like, the sooner we catch Lex, it'd be better for you. Because obviously Lena doesn't know that literally Kara's been by her side the entire time as Supergirl. And even Nia later on, it's like, how you've been a terrible friend, you've been by her side. It's like, yes, Supergirl has, not Kara Danvers. And it's that whole complicated thing. And it's so sad because you can obviously tell Lena was more so snapping at her because it's like Lena had a whole bunch of secrets that she was dealing with, and that, dealing with the whole Lex's betrayal situation, just everything kind of happening, Eve's betrayal, like all of that, worrying about Jimmy this episode, which I'll get to that soon enough, that kind of took its toll on her, and so she just ended up lashing out at Kara. But Kara does, this great interview with, obviously, Nia, okay, but as Dreamer. And, because obviously she represents the both sides, because she's like, we as heroes kind of forgot, like, the important thing that a hero's supposed to do, inspire. We've been so handling the reporting, the fighting, we haven't been handling that aspect of heroism. And so Nia, being a human and an alien, she can talk from both experiences. It's like her parents, like, even though they're different species, like, they fell in love. And and I love that line of basically, even when her mom died, she felt like she lost a part of herself, but I still have my dad and he's my spine, kind of always keeping her standing straight no matter what ends up happening. Because obviously she comes from a world of, like, not just that situation, but also being a trans woman. So she understands on many different levels what it is to kind of be different. But it's kind of like, we shouldn't be afraid to accept who we are. Because even her being like, she loves April, she would rather pick salty stuff over, salty and kind God, I'm blanking on it, rather than sweets and stuff, you know, and just telling stuff about herself, because it's like, I'm not just an alien, I'm a person, I have my likes and dislikes, trying to, not, you know, basically humanizing aliens of like, oh, these aliens you're going after, they're just people too who are just living their lives, they're not these monsters that you think that they are, even going as far as being like, she likes super nerdy boys or something like that, and you hear Brady kind of go, huh. And he ends up kind of talking to Lena, kind of making an offhanded comment, and never kind of gets tackled, but it's kind of like, he's like, what's it like to kind of, what's the feeling, what's it like to feel love? And you see him kind of tearing up a little bit. I think it's like, yeah, it's no point denying. I think for him, it's like he's afraid to interfere with her timeline because of like her future, her destiny. He doesn't want to interfere with it, hence why he never told her who she really was in the future, or, you know, her descendants and stuff like that, because he doesn't want to potentially change the future. And I think for him, he's worried that even he has strong feelings for Nia. I think for him, he's worried that if he gets involved with her, it's going to compromise her future. But it's like, who knows, storybook wise, you might just happen to be her future. The whole time traveling situation, you know, it's a whole thing. But nevertheless, I thought that was just kind of a nice little thing to kind of add in there. But it's something that everyone ended up taking something from this episode. The whole aspect of kind of being like accepting who you are, putting who you are out there, because it, like, to do what Nia did took a lot of strength, you know. And even Lena was like, the fact of the matter is, like, I always thought I was brave and strong, but see what Dreamer just did, I couldn't do that. And, you know, Brainy is like, the fact of the matter is, we can't, like, kind of let fear keep us down. And because of that, Lena does eventually tell Kara the truth, which I was surprised. She's like, the fact of the matter is, it wasn't just Eve working with my brother. I was too. Like, you know, it's like, I knew he was manipulating me, but I still wanted to help him. And Kara understands, it's like, when the time comes to a life or death situation, of course you're going to help your sibling. No matter how evil Lex is, there's still going to be that part of Lena that feels something there, because it's like, that's still your brother no matter what. That even though they have had this complicated relationship in the past, the fact of the matter is, she's kind of shown that she still has some good memories, even though that kind of gets polluted a lot just by Lex being Lex and doing all the evil stuff he's done. You know, it's family's complicated like that. And I thought it was interesting, you know, because Kara was kind of, you know, understanding that whole situation. And I'm curious when it's all said and done, though, like, well, it's going to be interesting. Whenever Lena does eventually find out the truth about Kara, how will she react? Now, Kara was supportive in this situation, but maybe that's just going to get screwed up, being like, oh, you've known the entire time. You were lying and manipulating me, you know. But it could also look at it as a situation of like, oh, you were there for me even when I didn't realize you were there, because you were actually there as Supergirl, you know. So, which obviously, you know, she has a problem with Supergirl, because it's like, oh, there's Supergirl who's always there judging me just because of my last name, because she thinks Supergirl looks at her as a Luther, but it's like, no, Supergirl looks at you like Lena because Kara looks at you like Lena, you know. So but it actually took the both of them working together to kind of decipher everything and to be like, holy crap, they found out about Kaznia, so that's interesting. They're slowly, you know, unraveling this whole situation of figuring it out, what it is exactly that Lex is up to, what he's doing, Ameritech and everything. Because, you know, Lena was trying to fix Jimmy this episode, but it didn't work out. But that in itself is kind of a very interesting aspect to this episode, because it's like, when it's all said and done, you know, Brainy is going to hook him up to a mind palace, and it's like, basically you have to face your fears because of the Heronal. Basically, it amplified his PTSD, because it's kind of interesting, because the Heronal heals illnesses and, you know, wounds, and what is PTSD if not a wound? It's more of a psychological wound, but still, I think it's trying to heal it, and so it superfied his PTSD, and obviously it's giving him powers, and the panic is making it so he can't control it, but when it's all said and done, he can, when he eventually does control it, he can, you know, use it. He'll always have superpowers. So that's interesting. But it was kind of interesting to kind of deep dive into Jimmy's mind. Obviously, like, at first he thinks because trauma would have something to do with Lex. It's actually like, oh, they go back to the Daily Planet. It's the first time he was kidnapped. He met Superman, and it was when he was kidnapped by Lex. I thought it was kind of a nice little nod to be like, hey, you get to see the Daily Planet a little bit. I thought that was kind of neat. I thought we were probably going to dive deeper in that, but it's like, no, it seems like Jimmy's trauma goes back even further. It goes back to his dad, his dad's funeral, but he was there, but he wasn't, because Kelly is like, no, you weren't there. I kind of had to be there alone. And that, because Jimmy reliving these things isn't just hard on him, it's hard on her, because for her it's like she was an 8-year-old girl when their dad died, and Jimmy promised to be there for her, but he didn't, and obviously that's kind of something she's always carried with her. But the truth ends up coming out that, you know, because obviously Brainy brings up the fact is like we have a tendency to kind of like rewrite history to kind of protect ourselves from something, and it turns out Jimmy was. Basically, he had gone to his father's funeral before anyone had gotten there, but when he was leaving, you know, before the service started and everything, some bullies of his, you know, talking smack about his dad and everything, lock him in a coffin. And it took Kelly getting inside of his mind to be like, whoa, like, because she didn't realize, like, that's what he had went through. And he had told that diner story so many times over and over again that even he started to believe it, you know. And because, and I think it's so interesting when they didn't necessarily tie this together, but I did, and I think it's kind of interesting, because for him, it's like, he's like, I must have buried this whole thing out of shame. Remember what he had brought up to his therapist, like, last episode, where he was kind of like, as guardian, I should be able to just shake stuff off. I need to be stronger for everyone. I think that's what that was for Jimmy. Like, that stems from this root of he never told her the truth because he felt so shameful about it, because it probably made him feel weak. And I was like, oh, I wasn't there for you. I'm just going to say, it was something else. Like, because that whole situation, that him getting locked in somewhere, that's one thing of like it being like a bathroom or something until a manager came. But this, it's like two people put him there, and he was kind of being held against his will. He could hear Kelly kind of calling for him, but he couldn't do anything about it because he was trapped in there. And she obviously was so hurt because she's thinking like, oh, Jimmy wasn't there for me. And he probably feels bad because he's like, I wasn't there for my sister when she needed. So that shame, and I think that kind of like escalated itself. So I think this need to protect people, because even then it's like it's also stemming from like, oh, he wants to make his father proud. He wants to spend the rest of his life making his dad proud. And I think that could all kind of be connected. I don't know, like I said, maybe I'm the only one making the comparisons between the whole like guardian thing of like, if I'm not strong enough to kind of deal with this myself, like I should be able to, because heroes, you know, just kind of shake this type of stuff off, like, you know, kind of minimizing his own trauma to a certain extent. I think it's just kind of interesting, you know, like I said, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think that'd be kind of interesting to look at it from that perspective. Episode seemed like it was also kind of hinting towards what I was bringing up before, the whole Alex and Kelly thing. I did like that, you know, she was there for Kelly, because it's like, you know, it's like you and me are a lot of like, we are very good at taking care of other people, but not ourselves. And even Alex being like, if you don't want to be there, don't worry, I can be by Jimmy's side. And she's like, I appreciate it, but she's like, no, I can do this. And I thought it's just so interesting to see Alex kind of stick up for her like that. That's why I'm like, it seems like that's not just more than a friendship. Like, there might be something there, which would be cool. Like I said, it'd just be this beautiful, harmonious aspect of like, oh, if they did get together, it'd just be like, hey, the Danvers and the Olsens, you know, being a family would be nice, you know. I don't know, add to that family dynamic even more, you know, making the bonds even tighter, essentially, you know, just where my mind is on the whole thing. I'm also curious, you know, once again, like, if, you know, speaking of relationships and stuff like that, whether, you know, Brainy will ever take those steps forward with Nia. I think so, but he probably needs a little bit more time. Like, obviously, I think this is him stepping towards finally being able to probably eventually say, like, hey, this is how I feel. Because even earlier, she was like, at the beginning of the episode, she's like, wait, are you worried about me? He's like, oh, of course I am, because with everything going on. And it's like, no, I'm sure she was looking for more, like, of course I'm worried about you. I care about you. But obviously, Brainy being the way he is, too smart for his own good, overthinking everything, which obviously she likes that about him, but still. So there's that side of things, which we do see Jimmy still keeping his powers at the end. I love that when it came to Franklin, and like Kara's like, oh wow, Franklin, you saved me. He's like, wait, I did? She's like, yeah. It's like, even though she saved him, I thought that was kind of neat. I was actually kind of worried that like Alex might walk in and see Kara like zipping around, frost breathing all over the place, but it's like, no, she just turned the power off. Maybe she didn't get there enough in time to kind of help out or whatever. Well, she was there. Well, because the whole point was like, if she was there, she would have gotten in trouble, so she had to stay hidden anyway. So I just thought about it, because they brought up the whole point of like, if she went there, she'd get court-martialed. But then I was like, right, she couldn't have been. She needed to not be seen, so that's why she just was there hitting the light. So there's that. It is interesting because Ben is threatening to go after Dreamer, which I think we will see that more with everything that went on. But I think, well, I'll go ahead and talk about it. Obviously, at the end, the alien that he ended up taking a father from his wife and children, and she was obviously pissed off and ended up later on coming and killing his wife. Did not see that coming. I was like, wow. And now it's that situation of he put himself in this situation. It's like, would that... It's a cycle of hate. His hate for aliens fueled their hate for him and her, like, should she have done what she did? No, but, it's like I said, it's a cycle of hate that he's just feeding into more and more. And now that cycle of hate has come back and struck your own family because of you. And obviously, I'm thinking that's going to trigger him even more because obviously he's going to hunt down Dreamer. But what I'm curious about is, like, obviously Nia gave up a lot of details about herself. So I'm curious, is he going to use that to potentially track her down as her like secret identity and then try and come after her like that, because he made such a point of like, oh, I'm gonna come after you. But it might be a situation of he's going to try and draw her out into traps where it's like, oh, setting up stuff like because that's what I thought, like when obviously she came across like that safety house for all the aliens for him. I thought that's what that was. I thought that was like the Children of Liberty leading her into a trap or something like that. But no. But eventually, like, it might be something we see in like her getting trapped that way. We'll ultimately have to see. I'm curious, did her sister see that broadcast too? I mean, that was just in National City, but maybe it could have gotten a little viral too. So maybe that could be a tie to bringing Nia's sister back into her life, because she still hasn't really. Well, we don't know, but they haven't really talked since the whole. Maeve said what she said, and being pissed that Nia never wanted the gift, but she ended up getting it anyway, the sight, so. But we do see that, obviously, the speech inspires a lot of people. It's inspired Franklin's sister Edna, who was reluctant at first, but for her, it's kind of like, who cares about the consequences? The fact that she saw Dreamer put herself out there, and it's like, you know what? I'm going to do this no matter what. If you need someone to kind of go on the record and be a whistleblower, I'll do it about Ameritech. Because for her, because the reason why she was scared at first, obviously, is like if her or people she cares about, even her brother, could all be dragged into it. I mean, to the point, like Franklin, like a place across from where Franklin lives was raided. And so he stayed in the office, too scared to go back home. And so... But I think this is kind of a nice moment for both of them of just being like, we're not alone in this situation. We don't have to be afraid of who we are. We can't let fear win. And so both of them kind of having their stand-up moment, I thought was kind of pretty neat. But it wasn't just them this whole situation inspired. It even inspired George, which surprised me. George seems like he has the most reluctance towards the situation because he saw like all the like his dad doing what he did at the beginning of the episode. He's like, oh, he's like, yeah, I kind of forget that they're aliens, because they look so human and stuff like that. But it's like, oh, never forget that they're roaches. It's like basically like, oh, don't forget that they're really monsters underneath. It's like they're only monsters if you make them monsters. Like, you keep treating them like that, they'll have no choice but to eventually just be the monsters you want them to be. It's the only way to protect themselves and their families. That's the desperate position that you've left them in. Hence what happened to Lydia. But for George, like, obviously he just kind of goes along with it. It's so interesting because at first it seems like he was so certain with it, but now it seems like everything's kind of hitting him and be like, oh, especially because he ran into his friend Charlie. Is like, wait, you're an alien? Why didn't you tell me? It's like, why you think I didn't tell you? Because look at the situation. Look who your dad is. And that made him kind of question that. He even brought it up to his mom. I'm like, do you think maybe dad's going about things wrong? And she's like, of course not. It's like, wow. I mean, it seemed like she had some reluctance in the beginning, like when it first got being like, oh, what are you up to? What are you doing? But then when he got locked up, then she fully believed in what he was doing. So it's a situation where it's like, did you always 100% believe in what he was doing? Or were you blinded by love of like, this is the man I love and I understand what he's standing up for? Either way. But, I'm curious, because at the end, George ends up smashing one of the masks, and obviously sends a text to Charlie being like, hey, if you need someone to talk to, essentially, I'm here for you. Now, I'm curious, is that going to continue after losing his mom? Is he going to go full-blown Ben, and like the next time his friend gets in contact with him, he's going, oh, I'm going to take him down? Or is he going to blame Ben because he's like, this is all your fault. You being so hateful towards aliens is the reason why mom died, is because of all of this. I'm curious to see which way George ends up tilting in this situation. So it's definitely going to get very interesting in the next episode to see how all this ends up playing out. I did not talk about it too. Like, let's not forget, Jimmy showing off his superpowers and everything. It's interesting because he seems like he's on some Kryptonian level stuff. Like, he was floating, got superhuman strength, heat vision. I wonder if he's going to take up a new mantle, or is he going to still be Guardian, just Guardian with superpowers? Well, everyone knows who he is as Guardian, so he just might wear the same outfit and have the shield, but he might not have powers. I wonder, does he have powers in the comic books, or is that, the Harrenhal situation might not stay. It seems like it might be a permanent thing, but it might be something that eventually wears off, or at the very least, his powers have to be sacrificed, or they have to be drained for him to stay okay. I doubt that, but we'll see. I am curious in the long run to see if there's going to be anything else that he has. Because the crazy thing is, like, obviously he might have, like, superhuman abilities like Kara, but maybe they're not nearly as strong, but he also probably won't have the kryptonite weakness. Kind of similar to Mon-El. Mon-El, like, has very, Daxamites have have the same power level as a Krypton. Well, not the same power level, but roughly the same abilities in certain regards, but obviously not nearly as strong as Kara, so maybe it's going to be a similar situation in that regard. Either way, it's like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what the next episode has in store. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.